Let's talk about the Eagles because training camp opened today, and I'm not going to give you a whole play-by-play breakdown of training camp. I'm not checking to see if Elliot Shore Parts tracked all the stats today. That's not what matters. What matters are clippable moments. What matters are big-time quotes from big-time players. And you probably noticed this. You probably saw this. Since the Eagles got their new Super Bowl rings, the ones that have the cool little button that you push and the wings come out. Since that happened, you may have noticed that Jalen Hurts hasn't been wearing his Super Bowl ring. A lot of people have gotten worried.
Oh no. What if Jalen Hurts isn't a team player now? Is Jalen Hurts not wearing his Super Bowl ring because he's trying to send a message to the team? Is Jalen Hurts upset about some of the players the Eagles let go? Does Jalen Hurts actually hate A.J. Brown? Does Jalen Hurts want to be traded to the Cowboys? What now? What does it mean?
No. Jalen Hurts finally broke his silence and told you exactly why he's not wearing his Super Bowl ring. And if you haven't seen the quote already, as soon as I show it to you, you're going to go, yeah, that's Jalen. Quote, I've moved on to the new year. It's as simple as that. So people have been worked up about Jalen Hurts not wearing the Super Bowl ring. And he just says, I've moved on to the new year. It's as simple as that. This dude is a bona fide killer. This guy is cold-blooded. I love it. I respect it. One of the wildest parts of watching this offseason, I'm going to go twofold here. And I saw, and I don't remember where or who brought it up, but I've noticed that Nick Sirianni hasn't been ridiculously over the top. He didn't go get a book deal. There hasn't been anything that's made you say, oh, Sirianni's being a distraction from the Eagles and the afterglow of winning their second Super Bowl in franchise history after going to their second Super Bowl in 3 years where Jalen Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes in both of those Super Bowls. Sirianni hasn't done anything to take advantage of his raised profile from winning a Super Bowl. I would make the case that Jalen Hurts is the same way. Hurts could have been going around. Now, we had the Love Hurts, right, Jordan Brand thing, right after the Super Bowl, which was totally cool, totally fine. But you haven't seen Hurts doing anything that would kind of give you the indication that, this guy all of a sudden, is smelling himself. That this guy is, a changed man in a negative way. In fact, pretty much everything that we have seen about Jalen Hurts this offseason is, dude is, ready to go back to work. We heard A.J. Brown talk about how, not that it wasn't fulfilling to win a Super Bowl, but, when it ultimately happened, he was like, all right, this is cool. And then you're kind of, ready to go back after it. And Devontae Smith was the same way. These guys are all cut from the same cloth. And it is so interesting because, listen, I know how I am, right? Whenever there's, a success, you should try to savor it, even for a moment, right? I think that there's actually something a little bit off. If you reach the pinnacle of something or you accomplish something awesome, you take no time to appreciate and just go, yeah, we're on to the next one. No, take at least 5 minutes and be like, hey, worked hard to accomplish this thing, accomplished it. Awesome. Doesn't mean you take 2 weeks or 3 weeks to be like, look how great I am. You should certainly take some time to be like, this is pretty freaking awesome. Remember, Jalen Hurts, there's the image of him with the Lombardi and a cigar in his mouth, sitting in the hallway, just kind of soaking it in. That's great. If the next day he was ready to go back to work, all right, good on him, I guess. I always just the thing that always kind of worries me, right, is players after the game being like, whoa, this is the first one. We're going to come back and do it again next year. The work starts now. Cool. Act like a human for a second and enjoy it. And Hurts seems to have. But this guy has the idea. I think he is so locked in now on, he probably wouldn't say he's locked in on his legacy, that he's not thinking about his legacy. But I think there's something that ticks within inside this guy that says, they still doubt me. They still doubt my ability. These bullshit rankings done by executives, coaches, and scouts have me number 9. Have me behind Jaden Daniels, who's played 1 year, behind Justin Herbert, who has accomplished nothing in this league, behind the walking animated corpse of Matthew Stafford, all due respect, behind former number 1 pick Jared Goff, who has accomplished some stuff, but is not better than Jalen Hurts. Joe Burrow, who keeps digging holes in the beginning of seasons, and then, oh, look how great he was. He threw it. Okay, we always come from behind wins. Yeah. You dig a hole. you're going to throw the ball a lot. You're going to put up some pretty gaudy stats. Hurts just kind of looks like he's locked in on getting it done again and again and again. And when you saw him with like Michael Jordan, the pictures are going around like a week or two ago, just has a kind of aura to him. When you saw him take that picture with all the Jordan athletes, there's just kind of like an aura to the guy. He holds himself in a different way. And like, I think ultimately this guy's focus is on being the greatest quarterback, the greatest player of his era. I think that's where he's locked in on. And whatever happens, happens, but he's focused on the task at hand. And like, when that's the guy who's leading your team, when that's the guy who's the face of your franchise, it's pretty damn good. It's a pretty damn good thing. Now, Jalen Hurts has that kind of stoicism to it. There's a young guy who had a lot of fun at the Super Bowl parade, and a young guy who I think a lot of people certainly got to learn a little bit more about because of that Super Bowl parade, and a guy who played through a tricep tear in the Super Bowl. That was Nolan Smith. Now, I do want to touch on something Nolan Smith had to say, because to me, this is like setting such a wonderfully high bar for himself, but like, I kind of believe he has the ability to do it. We're going to throw out, because he was over on WIP's midday show today, and I want you to hear about Nolan Smith's goal for himself going into this season. Now remember, he suffered a tricep tear in the Super Bowl and kept playing like a freaking psycho, and good on him. Let's go over to Nolan Smith now, and I want you to see and hear what kind of a goal he has set for himself this season.
You know what I'm asking?
Yeah.
What's the number?
I can't tell it out loud.
Yeah, all right, then well, you can tell me in the.
So you have Hugh Douglas, who put up some fantastic numbers as a defensive lineman for your Philadelphia Eagles, and he doesn't say how many sacks. He says, what's the number? Okay.
Break, because I have a number in my head.
What's your number?
I'm thinking 10 to 12.
All right, so let's look at Nolan Smith's reaction. This person behind him is just kind of like, ooh, I don't know. 10 to 12, are you sure, Hugh?
That's a good number,
Yeah.
but that's on the low side.
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
So Nolan Smith says 10 to 12 sacks, that's on the low side. Okay, young fella. Okay, let's keep going.
I respect.
I ain't saying nothing else.
No, you don't have to. You don't. And you know what? Now I have to let everybody in because everybody probably don't understand the conversation.
Don't let them in.
Okay,
Don't let them in. Just keep it like that. Keep it like that.
All right,
All right, I don't know what that was. Maybe they've had a conversation off the air.
maybe I could speak without letting everyone know. What was your high? Was it 15?
15.
Well, that's the goal then. You got to beat Hugh Douglas. I mean,
That's a pretty respectable goal. To beat 15. 15's a lot.
You see,
gotta beat Hugh.
Pop.
Yeah.
They call me pop. Yeah,
you got to beat the old man. I mean, you got to beat Hugh.
Oh no, man! I don't never call them old men, man. They respect the game, and it's always gonna respect you.
See that? That's a great line from a young player too. Always respect the game, and the game will respect you.
Appreciate you.
What a
Appreciate
guy.
You. See, now that
What a
don't work
guy.
like that around these parts. They call me old every chance.
Come on.
Oh man!
So that to me, guys, is like a positive sign. So here you have, on one hand, you have Hurts, right? Hurts, stoic, doesn't let the highs get too high, the lows get too low. He's leading the team. You got a young guy like Nolan Smith, who's coming off of like what has been a debilitating injury, in fairness. Like a tricep tear is a legitimately awful, painful injury, not the easiest to rehab from. And he's not even talking about like, oh, well, I got to kind of ramp it up a little bit. I got to get myself, kind of back in the swing of the. No. It's like, yeah, 10 to 12, that's on the low side. Okay. Nolan Smith, we're all cheering for you. 100%. You know who else we're cheering for? And another guy that's kind of had to undergo some rehab, had to undergo surgery all the way back in March for his shoulder. That, of course, is first-round pick Jahad Campbell. And a little bit of positive, encouraging news as well. We actually saw young Jahad Campbell out at the first day of training camp today. And there he is. So if you were worried about, is Campbell going to be ready for the start of camp? I don't see a non-contact jersey there. So he's coming off a shoulder surgery back in March. He appears ready to go. That's another wildly successful, wildly high upside young defensive player to add to the mix. Very exciting. And the last thing that I want to get to The last thing is another one of the Eagles vets. And I think this is really, really important because there are very few guys who have been able to have the opportunity to repeat that have played on the Philadelphia Eagles. And certainly going into this year, it's down to what? They're 3-2, right? You got Lovato Elliott and Lane Johnson. When you hear Lane Johnson, he was on WIP's morning show. And he's been a Super Bowl winner twice. He had an opportunity to repeat after Super Bowl 52. We know how that went. They had the opportunity to win a Super Bowl 3 years ago. We know how that went. They won the Super Bowl last year. Fantastic. Last season, earlier this year. Fantastic. It's a hard thing to do. Winning a Super Bowl is hard. Repeating is even harder. We're going to go out to Lane Johnson here really quick because I think that this is another one of those things that it's different when it's a guy who used to play for the team who comes in and tells you how hard it is to win a Super Bowl, how hard it is to try to repeat. It's another thing when you share the locker room with that guy. Here's Lane Johnson talking to the WIP about the challenge of trying to win back-to-back Super Bowls.
Super Bowl teams, you lose so many guys, free agency. So, some of that nucleus is broken up a little bit. But, yeah, what I do remember about that year is we started off not very good in 18, finished pretty good.
Yeah.
Had a chance to go to the NFC Championship game. And then 2020 or 2022 or 3 started off hot and then took a dumpster dive in the end. But
that was brutal. And we all remember that. We remember the way that the team collapsed, and we were talking about, does Nick Sirianni need to lose his job? And there were people starting to doubt Jalen Hurts and his leadership. And we all remember how that went. It was horrible.
Through both of those, I think what I remember most is just being distracted. I think, trying to achieve, hit a home run every game, just trying to be a hero every game instead of just playing the game.
So it seems like the Eagles have their heads on their shoulders the right way. If you remember going into the Super Bowl last season, one of the things that I kept saying was, it's one thing when you've never been there before and you don't know what to expect, because it's not just playing in the most important game of the year. It's not about just playing in the biggest game of the year, the biggest game that you might ever play in your entire career, period. When you don't know everything that the Super Bowl entails, the spectacle, the media availability, all the interviews that you're going to be doing the week leading up to it, all of the parties that you're going to be invited to, all of the things going on that are out of your normal routine. And you have that for like 2 weeks. Like you typically get that first week off, but the second week leading into the Super Bowl, you have all these media availabilities, all this kind of stuff that you're not used to having. There's a lot of pressure. And then you get kind of hit with that debilitating pressure of, wow, millions and millions and millions and millions of people are going to be watching me in this game. When you haven't had that experience, there's no way to prepare you for it. The only preparation, the only thing that can prepare you for it is experience. And so going into last season's Super Bowl 59, I said, well, a lot of the guys that were on that team, or a lot of the most important guys on that team, played in Super Bowl 57. They were there to take on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. They now know what it's like. It was different than like when you had Lane Johnson and Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham saying going into Super Bowl 57, hey, here's what we remember from Super Bowl 52. It's one thing to have somebody in your locker room who tells you what it's like. It's another thing to experience it. Now, a lot of the guys that matter on this team have been to 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 seasons, and they're going to try to go back and repeat. Like, they're going to try to do something that only one other team in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles has had the opportunity to do, enter a season as a Super Bowl champion and attempt to repeat. It clearly did not happen for the Eagles following Super Bowl 52. We will see what happens this year, but the experience that those guys have together and the experience of what it's like to get to the top of the mountain, they don't exactly know what it's like to have the target fully on their back. They did know that, like, listen, Super Bowl 57, there was a big, I would say that, like, the season with Super Bowl 57, there was a lot of domination that the Eagles did. But going into that year, I don't think there was as big of a target on their back. After Super Bowl 57, and after watching Hurts outplay Mahomes, you knew that following season, everybody was going to gun for the Eagles. They were a representative of the NFC in the Super Bowl. That's going to be one of the games that everybody circles on their calendar. Even the worst teams in the league that are going to take them on, they're circling that. That's the team that was one win away from, hoisting the Lombardi trophy. you certainly are going to have that times like 10 now that you are the defending champions. Every team and every player that lines up across from a Philadelphia Eagle this year is going to look to prove that their team or they themselves as an individual player is better than their counterpart from the reigning defending Super Bowl champion. It seems like they all have their heads screwed on the right way, which is great. And speaking of having their heads screwed on the right way, and speaking of like having to do the right things, there's maybe one thing that is even better. And there were pictures going around of this guy, like it was backlit, right? It was like some on-screen stuff. I want you to take a gander at Jordan Davis. Now, I'm going to give a shout out to this account over on X, Eagles Fans 9, because they have the side-by-side. And I think the side-by-side is where it's really going to kind of hammer home. So Jordan Davis is a guy, if you remember last year, Brian Baldinger called out Jordan Davis. Essentially said, like, dude's looking chunky. Not sure he's going to be able to, like, compete at a high level because his weight is out of control. Let's look at last year's Jordan Davis versus this year's Jordan Davis and try to tell me that these guys aren't starkly different looking players. This is Jordan Davis now, right here. This is Jordan Davis reporting to training camp. This is Jordan Davis as a rookie. Now, obviously, you have different scenarios. You're right. He's got like the baggy kind of jacket here versus here. You know, he's not, but like, you see right here, if you're a father of 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 kids, you might notice from time to time that this area right in here, this abdomen area, this kind of balloons a little bit as you have kids. And in the case of Jordan Davis, it's not about having kids. It's just, you know, you're a big defensive lineman and everybody kind of expects for you to be a big boy. He looks svelte. If the idea is that Jordan Davis needed to lock in, maybe Vic Fangio got in Jordan Davis's head. You're really good as currently constructed. You could be great. And when you have a guy like Jalen Carter playing next to you, who's getting like comparisons to Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh in his prime, like when you have that guy next to you, if you're Jordan Davis, you have everything at your disposal. You have every possible good thing going for you coming off a season as a Super Bowl champion. If you come in better shape and you can dominate and maybe become more of a force in the passing game, he's a great run stuffer, but if he could be a better interior lineman in the pass rush, that probably takes him to a whole other level. He came in looking ready to go. Again, I think so much of it is a mental game, and this goal to repeat is a mental game. And right now, while you're watching Dallas imploding with Jerry Jones sniping at Micah Parsons and Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons kind of giving it back. You're seeing Terry McLaurin not reporting to the camp for the Commanders and Jackson Dart throwing an interception on his first pass of 11 on 11 in training camp for the Giants. The Eagles, they're just kind of humming along. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They're leaving it on the field. And they're not creating any distractions away from it. Could be a hell of a season. We shall see.